Welcome to this enrichment on the politics of the Arctic. Before I get into the politics, I just want to give a brief overview of the Arctic. So, unlike the Antarctic or Antarctica, there's no land at the North Pole in the Arctic. It's essentially very, very thick layers of ice floating on the Arctic Ocean. Both of them, the Antarctic and the Arctic, have captured the imagination of explorers really since the 18th century. But as we'll see, the story starts a little earlier than that. If we go to the next slide, we'll see a map. This map is helpful because I think often when you're looking at a flat map of the world, it's difficult to picture how other countries are placed really in relation to the Arctic. As you'll see, Russia has an enormously long coastline with the Arctic, and the US actually, because of Alaska, has a little stake, as does Canada and Greenland, which is owned by Denmark. The first exploration really was Eric the Red, who's a legendary Icelandic explorer, and he is said to have discovered Greenland in about 982. Kind of skipping forward about 600 years, you've got William Barents, who is a Dutch explorer, and he found Spitsbergen, which is a tiny island just above Scandinavia. Okay. Henry Hudson, so he's trying to find the Northwest Passage, which is the passage that would go above Canada and past Alaska out into the Pacific Ocean. Okay, and he did that around 1610, and in fact the Hudson Bay is named for him. And then the ships, the Terror and the Erebus, attempted again to find the Northwest Passage, where Hudson had failed, and they too failed, and their ships were trapped in the ice, and all 139 perished. In terms of exploring, I'm not going to get into it too much. It's a huge topic, and I think there's some enrichments later down the line that are going to cover it. So, I suppose the first question really is the Arctic important in politically? And it might be hard to imagine why it's important. That there are two reasons I think it's important, and I'm going to talk about these in a bit of depth. The first is trade routes, and the second is oil and natural gas. Now, there's a very obvious reason why the Arctic is important, not politically, and that is the issue of climate change at the moment. Now, both of my reasons, trade routes and oil and natural gas, these reasons are actually emerging as factors due to the ice melting. So you may notice online or in the news that the debate rages at the moment in the West as to what extent our actions as humans are affecting climate change in a real way, and to what length we should go in order to try and combat climate change or global warming. The fact, though, is that the ice in the Arctic is melting, and this is really important for the reasons I've mentioned. So if we start with oil and natural gas, estimates vary, but basically there's enormous quantities of oil and natural gas in the seabed, so under the ice, and the thickness of the ice and the way in which it moves makes it very difficult to extract these resources. However, as I've mentioned, the melting ice means that as the ice kind of recedes, it becomes easier to access these resources, and there's substantial financial benefit to accessing it, and and selling it. So I think over the next couple of decades, certainly we'll see a pickup in interest in this area because of the oil and natural gas that is there. The second reason I gave was trade. Now, if we look at this map here, the red route is called the Arctic route, and for some countries, Scandinavia, parts of Russia, this is a much quicker route to getting to China, for example, or the kind of the Middle Eastern the Eastern markets in general. Now, the issue with the red route is that because of the Arctic and again the way the ice moves, it's generally these sorts of routes through the Arctic Ocean are only ever open for maybe a month every year. Now, in 2014, a cargo ship set sail from Canada. Apologies for the grainy map. A cargo ship set sail from Canada to China, but rather than going south through the Atlantic and across the Panama Canal to China, it went across the top of Canada along this red route in the Northwest Passage. It's far quicker than the southern route. The waters were deeper, which means that these cargo ships can carry more cargo, and so companies looking to make, or indeed governments looking to make savings on fuel consumption and just overall running costs, will be very happy to see these routes opening up more and more and more, as they are, for longer and longer each year due to the ice melting. Even this route, the red route, the Northwest Passage, isn't open all year round. In the winter, the ice closes up and it's impassable. The other route, the green and the blue route, the green route first is a possible one, and that looks to be going right through the middle of the Arctic Ocean, which obviously at the moment is basically impossible due to the thickness of the ice. And the blue route is the northern route that I spoke about on the previous slide that goes above Russia. Okay, so at the moment I think that's open maybe 1 or 2 months a year. As the ice melts, it's going to open up more and more opportunities for Russia and other countries to take advantage of this. It's particularly interesting because at the moment you have the Suez Canal in Egypt and the Panama Canal in Central America, and if the Arctic were to melt sufficiently, Panama and Egypt could suffer heavily economically, as less trade would pass through their canals, as these potentially quicker and cheaper routes open up. So I've said earlier that there are a few countries that we saw on the map: Canada, the US, Denmark, I think Finland as well, who are in a good geographical position to take advantage of this developing situation in the Arctic. Now I've picked Russia to look at because I think they are the most prepared at the moment, and they are the country who seems to see the real possibilities opening up rather quickly in this area. The picture on the left again shows the Northern Sea route in orange, and in blue the Arctic Sea ice extent as of 2020. On the right, I think the interesting thing here are the red squares. Now these are the Russian military bases on the Arctic coast. This, if anything, shows Russia's intent. There's very little else that they would be there for. So Russia are I think really looking ahead in the next 10 or 15 years and banking on the fact that there will be possibly be conflict over the resources underneath the ice, and they want to be in the strongest position to that they can and to take advantage of that. One of the reasons that Russia is so excuse me, one of the reasons that Russia is so keen on extracting this oil and natural gas is that it supplies 25% of Europe's oil and gas on average. Now, if you have a look at countries that border Russia in Europe, it tends to be nearer 100% of their oil and gas. This dependency on Russia from other countries gives Russia political power in that the Ukraine, one of the countries who rely enormously on Russia, have to be very careful with whether they criticise Russia or get in their bad books, because Russia can just turn off the oil taps and the lights, the heating all go out in Ukraine. So as well as economic power, their monopoly on oil in much of Europe gives Russia great political power. So they're very keen, firstly, to I suppose earn that financial reward that would be gained from exploiting the Arctic, but secondly, to prevent a rival supplier of oil in Europe from springing up. So they're really keen that they maintain the dependency that countries like Ukraine, Estonia, Finland, Latvia have on Russia for oil. If another country was to start supplying them with oil, then as well as losing out economically, Russia's political power in Europe would start decreasing as well. And for other countries, obviously, there is then a great opportunity to disrupt Russia's power in this area. So these are some pictures of some special force exercises in the Arctic. So you've got some tanks. I think the Russians did one exercise with over 150,000 soldiers, and it was their biggest military exercise since the Cold War. So what is the situation currently? As I've said, Russia is the most prepared. Access is still not there in the Arctic. It hasn't melted enough, though some countries are trying to develop ways of accessing it now. But in the coming decades, the focus will shift further and further north. And at the moment, Russia, as I say, they are poised to take the most advantage of it. But we may see the US and Canada looking to follow suit. Thanks very much for listening. That's the end of the enrichment.